In a sunlit room at Boston General Hospital, Amy Wilson was reviewing a patient's chart. Her shoulder-length brown hair was tucked behind her ears as she diligently wrote clinical notes in her modest uniform. Suddenly, her phone vibrated with an incoming call from her sister, Catelyn. Amy sighed deeply, hesitating to answer. "Amy, I need $50,000 right now." Her brother's voice was urgent. Amy could almost picture his wild blonde hair and designer clothes from his voice alone. This was the third request for emergency money this month. "Catelyn, what's up this time?" Amy's voice was laced with exhaustion. At 32, she had built a career making $320,000 a year, but most of it went to supporting her sister. "It's only temporary. I'll pay you back next month for sure." How many times had she heard those words? The total debt had already surpassed $300,000. Amy looked out the window of the consulting room at the hospital garden. There was a flower bed she tended to during breaks, her only luxury in a modest life. She often spent peaceful moments there during vacations, reading. Meanwhile, her sister lived in a high-rise apartment on the beach, dressed in luxury brands. Looking back, the rift between the sisters began in childhood. When 10-year-old Amy won the math Olympiad, 7-year-old Catelyn broke down in tears at the award ceremony. Their mother's harsh scolding in front of assembled relatives. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" likely left deep wounds in Catelyn's young heart. The sisters' lives continued to diverge. At age 15, Amy received the State Outstanding Student Award, while 12-year-old Catelyn struggled with poor grades and attended remedial classes. In family photos, Catelyn deliberately placed herself on the edge, sometimes refusing to be in them altogether. In college, Amy graduated at the top of her class from Harvard Medical School. Teachers praised her dedication while she studied late at night in the library. In contrast, Catelyn repeated 2 years at the state university. Witnessing their parents' disappointment gradually turned her self-destructive. 5 years ago, when their parents suddenly died in a car accident, each sister inherited $500,000. Amy immediately used the entire amount to pay off Catelyn's accumulated student loans. However, Catelyn began to live extravagantly and exhausted her inheritance in a year. "It's okay, I'll transfer it." "But this is the last time," Amy said, remembering how many times she had declared something the last time. It started with covering university tuition, then the repeated debt payments, the living expenses, and now the wedding costs. Her sister demanded support as if she was entitled to it, without expressing gratitude even once. When the transfer completion notification popped up on Amy's phone, Catelyn immediately sent a heart emoji. However, hours later, Amy saw her sister's post on social media. "My sister, a doctor, makes a living off of the misfortunes of others. It's a disgrace to the family." The post had already received dozens of likes. Amy silently placed her smartphone on the desk and went back to the patient's medical records. She gripped her pen tightly, suppressing her emotions. From her white coat pocket peeked out an invitation to the wedding at the Riskin, with the logo of the luxurious hotel. The spring sunlight streamed into the grand ballroom of the Boston Riskin Ball as 200 guests mingled in their finest attire. Amy was in a small staff room, changing into a black uniform dress under fluorescent lights. The cheap fabric stood out sharply. A poster with staff guidelines on the wall, with the phrase, "Always smile," seemed ironically cruel. "It seems like it doesn't fit you," Catelyn said with a smirk. Her pure white wedding dress was dazzling. "But it suits you well, unlike that prestigious white doctor's coat. Remember when you worked at that family restaurant during college? You were something like this." The uniform was too small. The shoulders were tight, the length too short, the bodice constricting. The skirt rode up unnaturally with every step. The intent was obvious. Amy looked down at her reflection in the mirror. The redness rising in her neck gave away her humiliation. "It's been a while since you worked as a waitress, no? But this is where you belong," Catelyn said, gracefully lifting the expensive skirt of her wedding dress. The jewels on her tiara sparkled. "Now, please talk to the guests, and please take care of the dishes too. Oh, and when you leave the back area, always use the staff corridor. Don't use the guest corridors. Someone like you shouldn't be seen by our important guests." In the narrow service area, there was a single cheap folding chair with Amy's belongings in a paper bag. From the next room came the laughter of glamorous bridesmaids. She recognized the voices of former classmates among them. Amy nodded silently. Her sister's wedding. A grand ceremony with Robert, a brilliant investment banker from J.P. Morgan. And here she was, working as a waitress. As she climbed the service stairs of the hotel, she wondered what her parents would say if they could see this day. In a luxuriously decorated venue, a champagne tower sparkled elegantly as a live orchestra played. Crystal chandeliers gleamed in the spring sunlight, and the finest porcelain adorned the tables. High-class guests savored premium dishes complete with foie gras and caviar. Each carefully placed flower seemed to mock her. Amy served wine and dishes in silence. Her feet ached from hours of standing in unfamiliar short heels. The chef yelled at her, and older waiters made sarcastic comments, repeatedly asking, "Why is someone like you still working here?" Amy kept a deadpan expression. Between her service duties, she looked for her seat. The invitation surely had her name on the list. A momentary pause. Amy felt afraid. She knew her sister was looking for her, and the emotion in those eyes was pure hatred. "By the way, I'd like to introduce you to someone. Please, look at that waitress serving wine." Amy's hands trembled. The dark red wine spilled onto the white tablecloth. The guests frowned. The stained cloth seemed to symbolize the wounds in her heart. "She's my sister." Yes, surprising, isn't it? She's not supposed to be a doctor, but here she is, doing this kind of work. It's truly the shame of our family. But this is where she belongs. Everyone, please enjoy watching her work. Loud laughter echoed throughout the place. The guests wore confused expressions as whispers spread through the wealthy crowd at the doctor's table. Amy's colleagues stood up in shock. The society ladies whispered behind their fans. Some even started taking photos. Her heart raced. She had trouble breathing. A cold sweat ran down her neck. Amy gently put down the bottle. He came and started walking towards the staff exit. He felt hundreds of eyes on his back. Each step seemed like an eternity. Tears ran down his cheeks, but he didn't show them to anyone. He just wanted to escape from that place quickly. While looking for the buttons on his uniform, a sudden voice echoed throughout the place. It was full of anger and determination, waiting. It was Robert, the groom. The place fell silent. Catelyn's smile disappeared as she stood paralyzed. The orchestra stopped playing, and the hands holding the glasses of champagne froze in midair. Robert decisively walked to the microphone with a thick folder in his hand. His expression showed a severity never seen before. With all eyes on him, Robert slowly opened the folder, bank statements, stacks of smartphone transfer histories. Each page told the truth that was about to be revealed. His hands were not shaking. "Okay, Catelyn, let's reveal who the truly shameful person here is." Robert's voice was calm, but full of anger. Standing with a straight back, he looked directly at Catelyn. From his expensive suit pocket, he pulled out the first document, a bank statement for college tuition reimbursement. Amy's signature was visible next to the amount. "Amy covered your college tuition of $120,000, plus $40,000 for 2 years of repeating classes. Another $115,000 for the qualifying exam fees. To make these payments, she worked night shifts and gave up her vacation." The place was buzzing with murmurs. Catelyn's face paled. Her beauty, so superficial, seemed to peel off under the makeup. "And look at this." Rob held up new documents. The stack of papers was like an indictment listing Catelyn's crimes. Credit card debt of $85,000, casino gambling debts of $50,000, living expenses of $225,000, luxury brand purchases, trips abroad, even spa treatments. Amy paid for all of that. Under the big crystal chandeliers, Catelyn almost fainted. The bridesmaids ran to support her, but their movements showed doubt. Her best friend's eyes now reflected bewilderment. "And this wedding?" Robert continued. "Half the cost of the venue, $45,000. The dress, $112,000. Decorations, $8,000. Party souvenirs, commemorative photos, production costs." Amy covered all of this. She also gave up all her savings, wishing you happiness. The whispers among the guests grew louder. The social elites exchanged glances. Between the high-class ladies and gentlemen, words like unbelievable circulated. Their glances now carried traces of pity. Demands for money at late hours of the night, emergency calls 2 or 3 times a week, weekend summons, and persistent demands even during work hours. You prioritized your wishes over the lives of patients. During surgery, you made 10 promises to pay. You kept 0. Each time, just empty words. Next month, Robert pulled out his smartphone and showed the screen. Evidence after evidence projected on the big screen. Unpaid bills, late-night messages, coercive demands. The ordered materials, chronologically arranged, vividly illustrated her cunning nature. And this is the worst. Look at these social media posts. While receiving support from Ami, Catelyn had been mocking her in secret. The posts were projected on the big screen. The place fell silent. The sound of collective gasps was audible. In conversations with friends, the words were even worse. Robert continued, his voice now carrying a coldness beyond anger. Criticizing your sister's appearance, insulting her profession, defaming her private life, all while continuing to demand support. I can't trust my life to such a despicable sister. Catelyn collapsed in tears. Her figure, draped in the pure white wedding dress, now looked pitiful. However, no one could tell if her tears were from genuine remorse or fear of her precarious position. But I had reasons, she suddenly screamed. The words poured out like a broken dam. I was always being compared to her. I could never live up to expectations. Mom always. Her voice trembled and cracked. Mascara ran down her cheeks as her expensive makeup crumbled. I was perfect. I was excellent. I was the pride. I was always in the shadow. Nothing but a shadow. I cried at the Math Olympiad Awards ceremony. I ran out of the classroom during the announcement of the state award for the outstanding student. When the acceptance letter from Harvard Medical School arrived, with the emotional outburst, Catelyn's makeup was completely ruined. Even her luxury brand dress could no longer hide her inner ugliness. She looked like a clown stripped of its mask. That's why I needed money. I needed luxury brands. I needed an extravagant lifestyle. So people would recognize me. They would see me. But money was not enough. I accumulated debts. I told lies. I betrayed my sister. Her confession became more and more incoherent. Childhood trauma, being constantly compared, the pain of not meeting expectations, the distorted need for recognition, jealousy, and the complex of inferiority, vanity and pride, dependency and aggression, all erupted in an ugly display. In a corner of the venue, former classmates were recording videos on their phones. Tomorrow, this scene would probably spread across social media. Ironically, the public embarrassment that Catelyn feared the most was becoming a reality. Meanwhile, Ami stood silently, still in her waitress uniform, listening to her sister's confession. Her eyes showed deep sadness. Instead of anger, there was also a hint of regret, like a sister who couldn't protect her sister. Catelyn, Ami spoke for the first time. Her voice was surprisingly soft. You know, I never expected anything from you. I just loved you like my sister. There was never any need for comparison. Those words broke the last wall in Catelyn's heart. She fell to her knees, sobbing loudly. The pure white wedding dress spread across the floor. It looked like scattered snow, or maybe her shattered vanity. Various reactions swirled around the venue. Some looked at Ami with sympathy. Others looked at Catelyn with contempt. Some were confused and disturbed, and some were even recording. The dramatic scene unfolded on their smartphones. The wedding, decorated with luxurious decorations and premium cuisine, was coming to an unexpected end. Catelyn, Robert's voice resonated coldly through the venue. This wedding is canceled. The entire venue was moved by those words. The champagne bubbles burst uselessly, and the orchestra's performance stopped halfway through the piece. Catelyn remained slumped on the floor with her shoulders shaking while 200 guests showed expressions of confusion and agitation. Robert continued with a resolute attitude. What he looked for in Catelyn was honesty. However, all he found was a lack of financial sense, an absence of gratitude, and betrayal of family. Marriage means trusting our lives to each other, but I must conclude that she is not qualified for this. He briefly looked at Ami and bowed deeply. Tears glistened in the eyes of the man known as the brilliant investment banker of J.P. Morgan. I can't find the words to apologize to you. Simply because she was my fiancé's sister, we put you in such a humiliating position. That's also my fault. I trampled on your tolerance and kindness. The collar of his expensive suit trembled slightly. With an expression that mixed anger and regret, he turned to Catelyn, gripping the microphone. This isn't just about financial sense. It's about basic morals. Far from showing gratitude to your sister, you continued to slander her behind her back. I can't trust my life to someone who tramples on the goodwill of others and lies easily for their benefit. That is unacceptable in a life partner. At the venue, the staff began to move hastily. Security guards were posted, restricting the entry of what appeared to be reporters. The social elite guests were already leaving their seats. Women with luxury brand handbags were heading for the exit, whispering gossip under their breaths. I will cover all cancellation fees, Roberts said to the vendors. However, I require the presentation of all receipts and estimates. Given Catelyn's tendencies, we must consider the possibility of inflated charges. Considering her habits, this verification is necessary. At those words, Catelyn's face paled even further. The sound of accountants frantically flipping through documents could be heard. The florist anxiously began checking invoices. Minutes later, social media was flooded with news of the wedding's collapse. The videos recording Catelyn's collapse garnered millions of views. Catelyn's phone kept ringing. Cancellation notices started coming in from real estate clients. We can't deal with an agent who has lost credibility. A continued relationship with a morally deficient sales rep is impossible. Her annual income was approaching zero. High-rise apartment loan payments, luxury brand purchases, casino debts, everything was turning against her. Amidst the chaos, Ami slowly began to take off her waitress uniform. Looking at her reflection in the small dressing room mirror, she reflected on the past few days. The time she spent desperately supporting her sister after the death of their parents. But was it really for her sister's benefit? Wait, big sister. Catelyn screamed in her white wedding dress. She crawled on the floor, clinging to Ami's feet. Don't abandon me. Please help me. This time, I will change. Ami stopped and turned around. A deep fatigue showed in her eyes. She gently but firmly pushed away her sister's hand. That's enough. Following my nickname was also my mistake. My support became a tool for your destruction. True love sometimes requires firmness. Her voice was calm but firm. Each word carried emotional weight. I will always take care of you as your sister, but I will not extend my hand to you anymore. That is my final expression of love. This is not a punishment. It is a lesson to help you become a true adult. With those last words, Ami left the hotel. The spring sunlight softly illuminated her back. She left the neatly folded uniform at the reception desk. Catelyn stood alone in the place, her makeup ruined, her hair disheveled in her wedding dress. The lavish decorations and food, the expensive clothes, all seemed to symbolize her shallowness. Her former friends left without looking back. Days later, an eviction notice appeared at Catelyn's luxury apartment. Her credit cards were suspended one after another, and her bank accounts were seized. The backlash continued on social media. Days of being exposed online as the woman who betrayed her sister took their toll. Former friends cut ties with her one by one. The luxury brand handbags she had proudly posted ended up in pawn shops. Meanwhile, Ami continued her regular job at the hospital. However, she no longer needed to fear the late-night phone calls. Freed from the burden of debt repayment, she was gradually rediscovering the joy of focusing on her job as a doctor. Her expression showed traces of relief during shift breaks. At night, Ami spent more time in the hospital's rooftop garden. The flowers she grew there soothed her heart. In Ami's desk drawer was a carefully preserved letter written before the memorial photos of her parents. It read, "Dad, Mom, I have finally decided to live my own life. Please take care of Catelyn from heaven. She will surely find true happiness, and I too will follow my path. I believe I can become a better doctor and a better person, learning from these struggles." The spring breeze gently tapped the hospital windows, as if announcing the beginning of a new season. Carried by that wind, the sisters' new lives began to unfold quietly. 2 years later, Catelyn quietly folded uniforms at a coin laundry in suburban Boston. The uniform from her cleaning company was not expensive, but it stayed clean. Although it lacked the glamour of her former designer brands, her expression had regained its serenity. Her phone vibrated, an inexpensive model, but it showed signs of careful use. The screen displayed a message from her sister. "Happy birthday, Kate's smiling face with smiling eyes." Catelyn smiled. Monthly phone calls and birthday messages. That was now the comfortable distance between the sisters. Not too close, nor too far. Gradually, they were rebuilding trust while maintaining appropriate boundaries. The debt payment was still halfway done, but she continued with steady monthly payments. The cleaning job was challenging, but humility was gradually changing her. "Catelyn, today," yelled a senior colleague from the cleaning company. Her former haughty attitude had vanished, replaced by the recognition of her sincere work ethic. During breaks, Catelyn would look through brochures from a small real estate office. Along with her cleaning job, she had started studying to get her real estate license. This time, she wanted to conduct honest business, without exaggerated advertisements and inflated fees. Meanwhile, Ami had been promoted to department head at the hospital. While leading the medical team and mentoring young staff, she also published research papers. The time and money she previously spent on supporting her sister could now be put toward her growth. "Good job with the surgery, doctor," the nurses cheered. Her expression no longer showed its former tiredness. In the pocket of her white coat was a birthday card from her sister. Although it was not elaborately decorated, it contained sincere words. "Big sister, I will never forget that day. Your severity saved me." Ami sometimes thought of her sister in the rooftop garden of the hospital. The events at the glamorous wedding venue now seemed like distant memories. However, that experience had helped them both grow. "Dr. Ami, your flowers are beautiful," a colleague commented. What was once just a hobby had become their emotional support. The blooming flowers swayed gently in the wind, as if watching over the sisters' new lives. Sometimes, they ate together, not in fancy restaurants, but in small family restaurants. They talked about work and the small events of daily life. The previous pretense and superficiality had disappeared. "Big sister, I'm moving forward little by little." "Yes, I know." In their brief conversations, a new trust was sprouting. It wasn't a perfect relationship. Sometimes, words failed them, and awkward silences fell. But now, they could accept that imperfection. The past couldn't be erased. The wedding video remained on social media. However, it had become a starting point for their new lives, from a past full of pretense and superficiality to a present with their feet on the ground and towards a better future. In front of the commemorative photos of their parents, the sisters prayed in silence. It was no longer necessary to compare or compete. They could simply follow their paths at their own pace. The spring breeze stirred their hair again, as if announcing the arrival of a new season, as if encouraging their journey forward in life.